There's a high probability that you're using a sensitivity that's too high, and when your sensitivity is too high, you won't have good control over your mouse movements and you can't be as precise with your aim. So how do I know that you're probably using a sensitivity that's too high? Well, I have a tool on my website that lets you calculate your eDPI in Fortnite. Your eDPI is your true Fortnite sensitivity. The formula for calculating your eDPI is your mouse DPI multiplied by your in-game Fortnite sensitivity. And the reason for using eDPI is that it gives us a consistent value that all players can relate to regardless of the mouse DPI that you use. I also have a video about how to calculate your eDPI on this YouTube channel, and since uploading that video, it's gained thousands of views and hundreds of comments from people letting me know their eDPI in Fortnite. So, I've been able to get a pretty good idea of the sensitivity that a lot of Fortnite players are using. Most of the people that were commenting were using a sensitivity that's far too high, and very few were using a low or a normal sensitivity that I would recommend using. Now, I've gone through each and every comment on that video and written down the eDPI of every person that commented so I could analyze it. And what I discovered shocked me. You see, the average Fortnite eDPI of the people that commented on that video is 310. This is more than 4 times higher than the average eDPI of the best Fortnite players. And if your sensitivity is anywhere near as high as this, you're never going to be a top Fortnite player because you just can't have precise aim with a sensitivity that's this high. And what this tells me is that your typical Fortnite player has no idea about what sensitivity they should be using, even if there's someone that's looking for more information about sensitivity and eDPI because they've come across my content. Now the question is, why are so many Fortnite players using a sensitivity that's way too high? And I have a few answers. First, I think that people are lazy. And that's not to be cynical, but we do want things to be easy and effortless. And when you use a very high sensitivity, you don't need to put in as much effort to move your mouse. You only need to use your wrist and your fingertips to move your mouse a small amount, and your mouse cursor will move as far as you need it to. Using a low sensitivity, on the other hand, means that you have to use your arm and move your mouse further, thus requiring more effort than people seem to want to put in. I also think that the gaming companies that manufacture mice are to blame for the rise in player sensitivities. For too long, gaming mice have used high DPI as a selling point in their marketing campaigns, because obviously a higher number is better, right? Wrong. High DPI being better is a myth. We've been sold a lie. And as a result, we have Fortnite players using unnecessarily high mouse DPI because they think it's better. Look, almost all Fortnite Pro players use a mouse DPI of exactly 400 or 800. And when you lower your mouse DPI, you lower your eDPI and you get more incremental control when you adjust your sensitivity in-game. Of course, using a high mouse DPI may have its place in certain kinds of games, for example, MOBA games, that reward you for having high APM or actions per minute and where mouse precision doesn't matter as much. But high mouse DPI has no place in a shooter game like Fortnite. Another reason why I think Fortnite players are using a sensitivity that's too high is that they're using a small mouse pad. When you use a small mouse pad, you need to use a high sensitivity because you just don't have enough space for low sensitivity. What should you do if you have a small mouse pad? The correct answer is to get a large mouse pad. Get one that's at least 400mm wide. A large mouse pad is one of the best investments that you can make. I also think the full-size keyboards are a reason why players are using a high sensitivity. Because if you play with a full-size keyboard and the keyboard's positioned horizontally, then you don't have as much room to move your mouse. And if your sensitivity is too low, you could end up slamming your mouse into the keyboard. The solution to this is to either angle your keyboard, which creates more space, or you could get a smaller 10 key less keyboard. And the final reason why I think players are using too high a sensitivity is because of Fortnite itself. You see, the sensitivity scale in Fortnite lets you set your sensitivity between 0% and 100%. And if you didn't know any better and you were setting your sensitivity for the first time, you're likely to set your sensitivity somewhere in the middle because that seems rational, right? So let's say you set your sensitivity at 50%. But even if you use a very low mouse DPI, like 400, and your in-game sensitivity is 50%, your Fortnite DPI would be at 200. And this is too high. And when you have a sensitivity scale that doesn't make much sense, in tandem with players using mouse DPI that's already too high, you have a recipe for disaster. The result is that your typical Fortnite player is using a sensitivity that's too high, and they're not going to be as good as they could be if they just used a lower sensitivity. Now I want to solve this problem of players using too high sensitivity. Listen, if you're a high sensitivity player, in the next few minutes I'm going to convince you to start using a lower sensitivity. Because if you want to be as precise as possible with your aim, then you should use the lowest possible sensitivity that you can play with. And to support my argument, I'm going to take an example from a different game, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, or CSGO. If you're not familiar with Counter-Strike, it's a first-person shooter game that's been around for over a decade, and it's one of the most successful and competitive esports of all time. Counter-Strike is a highly aim-dependent game, and the best players are known for having insane aim. Your mouse precision and ability to quickly and accurately click on a player's head is the most important thing in Counter-Strike, so you need to use an appropriate sensitivity to accomplish that. So what sensitivity do Counter-Strike players use? Well, take a look at this chart, and it shows the sensitivity index of CSGO players based on their rank. You can see that there's a direct correlation between using a lower sensitivity and the rank of the players. In other words, higher ranked players use a lower sensitivity, and the median sensitivity for the best CSGO players is roughly 40 centimeters per 360. But the lowest rank, or the worst players, on average, use a sensitivity that's about 3 times as high as the best ranked CSGO players. This suggests that if you want to be better at Counter-Strike and click on more heads, then you should just lower your sensitivity. And how does this all relate back to Fortnite? Obviously, Fortnite and CSGO are very different games. Fortnite is a third-person battle royale game where you can be attacked from all angles, and there's also building. Whereas CSGO is a first-person shooter game with long sightlines. But the thing that they have in common is that they're both shooter games, where your aim and your mouse precision is important. And if you want to improve your aim in Fortnite, then one of the easiest ways to do that is to just lower your sensitivity. Of course, I don't recommend that you use the same sensitivity in Fortnite as you would in Counter-Strike, because in general, a good Counter-Strike sensitivity is too low for Fortnite, and you're likely to find it difficult to build well, especially if you're someone that's already used to playing on high sensitivity. So by how much should you lower your sensitivity, and what sensitivity should you use in Fortnite? The argument of high versus low sensitivity is quite long, and they both have their advantages and disadvantages, but I think it's important that we define exactly what we mean when we say high sensitivity and low sensitivity, so that we're all on the same page. I've analysed the sensitivity of literally hundreds of pro players and streamers, and here's a chart of them. You can see that almost all of the players are using an eDPI in the range of about 30 to 120. So using this data, as well as our general intuition for shooter games, we can say that high sensitivity in Fortnite is an eDPI that's greater than 90, and low sensitivity is an eDPI less than 45, and anything between 45 and 90 we can say is a mid-range or normal sensitivity. And as for the acceptable range, I don't recommend going below around 35 eDPI because you'll be getting to the point of diminishing returns, and that at this point you'll start to encounter problems with your building. And I don't recommend going above about 150 eDPI because then it's going to be difficult to aim well. Of course, there are going to be some great Fortnite players that use sensitivities outside of these ranges, but they are an exception and not the rule. Precisely 0 of the highest earning Fortnite players use a sensitivity higher than 150 eDPI and lower than 35 eDPI. So why should you? No one should be playing Fortnite with an eDPI that's over 150, let alone 300, even though that's what many people that commented on my video are using, and I expect many other players are using as well. So what about the advantages of high sensitivity? Throughout this video, I've gone on about how bad high sensitivity is and how amazing low sensitivity is because you can aim better. But there's certainly an argument to be made for using high sensitivity in Fortnite as long as it's within the reasonable range that we just defined. And there's some excellent players that use a high sensitivity. For example, Mr. Savage is one of the best Fortnite players in the world and he uses a very high sensitivity. And as of right now, he's using an eDPI of about 117.45. This is a high sensitivity, but it's still less than half of the average eDPI of the players that commented on my video. If you're a high sensitivity player, you're going to want to use an aim trainer more because it's going to be harder to aim as well as low sensitivity. But by using an aim trainer, you'll be able to train yourself to use that sensitivity and be as good as other players. But what if you could get all the benefits of high sensitivity with the precision of low sensitivity? You actually can. Look, Fortnite gives you the opportunity to set your X and Y sensitivity, and these will control how fast your camera moves when you look horizontally and vertically. But you can also set your mouse targeting sensitivity and mouse scope sensitivity. Your mouse targeting sensitivity and mouse scope sensitivity are modifiers for reducing your mouse sensitivity when targeting or when you aim down sights, and when you use a scope weapon, like a sniper rifle. For example, if you use 100%, then it'll have no slowdown when targeting or scoping, and lower settings will have more slowdown. Say you had a mouse DPI of 800 and an in-game sensitivity of 12.5%. Then your eDPI would be 100, and this is a high sensitivity. But you could set your mouse targeting sensitivity and mouse scope sensitivity to 40%. Then your eDPI when aiming or scoping would be 40, so you get the benefits of high sensitivity when you're not aiming and building, and the precision of low sensitivity when you are aiming. As for what to set your mouse targeting and mouse scope sensitivity as, around 30% and 70% will work well for most people. If you're completely stuck for a value, then 50% is going to be a good starting point. That'll be half of your usual sensitivity, so it'll be quite easy for you to get used to. But the higher your base eDPI is, I think the lower your mouse targeting and scope sensitivity should be to compensate for that. So for example, if you're using an eDPI of 120, you may want to use a mouse targeting and scope sensitivity that's less than 50%, so say 30%, to have even more control when you're aiming and targeting and using a sniper rifle. So in conclusion, if your Fortnite eDPI is over 150, which I think a lot of players are using, then you need to lower it. A lower sensitivity gives you better mouse control and precision, so you can hit more of your shots. Of course, you can get away with using a high sensitivity in Fortnite as long as it's a reasonable sensitivity, and I wouldn't recommend going above 150 eDPI. And you can get the benefits of high sensitivity with low sensitivity's precision by using the targeting and scope sensitivity multipliers. If you want to learn more about sensitivity in Fortnite, then I have a guide on my website, kr4m.com/Fortnite-sensitivity, which I'll leave a link to in the description. I also have a video going into more depth about sensitivity, so if you prefer to watch content, I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. Anyway, that's the end of this video. I hope you found the video helpful, and if you have, then leave a like on the video and comment to let me know what you're going to do with your sensitivity, because I really want to find out. And make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications, because it really helps me grow. As always, thank you so much for watching and have an amazing day. Peace.